all the way back to the very beginning of human civilization, to humanity itself. And of course, the majority of human history has operated more according to anarchist kind of local scale political economic systems. So, it's not completely out of the realm. And of course, if we're looking at the kind of climate change that scientists are predicting, we're going to have a greatly diminished human population, and we're going to have to learn how to relocalize. And relocalization is sort of the antidote to globalization. And, I'm an advocate of rebalancing or balancing the flow of globalization. It's time to start learning from the indigenous cultures that do exist and practice ancient systems and values, and relearn those and bring those here. We need to start learning from the rest of the world. These are just more pictures from Bolivia. I'll just sort of go through.
Your talk reminds me of a quote by Voltaire.
Oh, thank you.
The comforts of the rich depend on an abundant supply of the poor. And we have to realize that in America, that our prosperity comes at the expense of the exploited global poor. And that we have to realize that at the end of this revolution, that we're going to have to sacrifice the way that we live right now. We're going to have to live differently. How do you feel about, what do you have to say about how we can live differently?
Yeah. I totally agree. And this is an example of how we need to learn from indigenous and other societies around the globe, especially in this historical moment. There's a proposal by President Evo Morales of Bolivia and the Bolivian delegation to the United Nations that they drew up a couple of years ago, called Living Well, as a proposal instead of living better. And what they're doing in Bolivia and other countries is really confronting head-on the multiple crises that we face right now. The financial crisis, the climate crisis, the development crisis of poverty and inequality. And so that's a proposal that carries a lot of weight and makes a lot of sense, because the idea is consuming what you need, operating more on systems of reciprocity and redistribution, which have always been economic systems in the history of human society, not just capitalism, not just market exchange. And so, recreating those kinds of values in modern society, I think, is a real way forward. Jordan is one of the most incredible artists I know, and he uses his art to represent the extreme habits of consumption, pollution, and injustice in the world. These are just two examples. If you go to chrisjordan.com, you can see his artwork, but you can see here on the left is how large this piece is, where he's representing 2 million folded prison uniforms to represent how many people we have incarcerated today in this country. And you can see a close-up there on the right. And then on the lower left is a collage that he made with tiny chips of plastic that he collected out of the Pacific garbage patch. And you can see a close-up on the right. And this is a piece that he did, I want to end on a positive note, that he did called E Pluribus Unum, where he took the names that Paul Hawken had compiled throughout his work, traveling the globe, giving talks. He collected the names of 1 million civil society organizations around the world. In fact, there may be as many as 2 million. And Paul Hawken asked Chris Jordan to help him conceptualize, what does this look like? How many people is that? How many different organizations, non-governmental, nonprofit, community types of organizations exist in the world? So he put together this mandala, and on the left you can see the scale, the massive scale, and you have to zoom in all the way. I mean, it's microscopic, and you can see here on the lower photo, you can see in tiny font the names end-to-end listed of all of the civil society organizations. So that is something to really keep in mind and remember that this really is a global citizens movement, and we better start taking advantage of that.
Thank you, Dr. Conzelman. Our next speaker is Dr. Michael Huber from the